Growing up, I felt like the outsider in my family. My early years feel hazy and out of focus, as if I didn't have edges or definition. It's unattractive to complain too much about your childhood, and playing the victim, even if you genuinely feel like one, isn't appropriate or constructive in a story like mine. It also isn't necessarily the truth. It's a truth. That doesn't make the story any less valid, but it's worth noting. There are many truths and versions of any story, but the ones from childhood are especially shape-shifting because that's when you should be experiencing everything in the moment most particularly. My truth is that I didn't feel nurtured as a child. I felt lost and invisible and often ignored. That lack of care, or what I take to be a lack, has informed much of my behaviour as an adolescent and an adult. My mum became pregnant with my sister Sarah when she was 18. She wasn't married. She gave birth alone because the night that she went into labour, Sarah's dad was at a Clash concert in Brighton, and her own mum, a staunch Catholic, didn't accompany her to the hospital because she disapproved of the pregnancy. My mum had no one to hold her hand that night. I didn't know that until later on in my life, but it explains a lot to me about my mum and my sister and their extraordinarily tight bond. It must have started that night when they went through that experience, just the two of them. They survived together. I felt outside their circle. I felt I had to survive on my own, and as if I was low down on my parents' list of priorities, below their careers, and less important than Sarah or my baby brother, who arrived 16 months after I was born. However much Alfie and I were together, and we were always bundled up together and treated like peas in a pod, I was also quite an independent little thing. More of a loner than my siblings. I didn't find a slot outside our family unit either. Alfie was passionate about football, for instance, but by contrast, I wasn't into anything in particular. Not gymnastics, or ponies, or dolls, or climbing trees, or makeup, or being a tomboy. I know I was loved as a child, but I didn't feel that love very much. My parents were away a lot, absent because of work, mum, or play, dad. They were young when we burst into their lives, and they were busy forming themselves while we were growing up. They both came from provincial working-class families, and they both made it to London and into media careers. They reinvented themselves away from their families and their roots, and that's hard to do. It takes work and energy and focus. It meant there wasn't too much time left over for us kids, so their attitude towards us was along the lines of, the kids will be okay. Let's let them get on with it. As kids, we were left alone a lot. Encouraging us to find hobbies or after-school activities was too much of a commitment and reliant on a routine that they had no interest in. I went to my first weekend activity after Mum got together with Harry, and they signed me up for junior cordon bleu cookery classes on Saturday mornings. I loved it. Instead, I read a lot and loved listening to audiobooks. I watched a lot of TV. The Australian soaps, Neighbours and Home and Away on at tea time each day were part of my daily routine. In the morning before school, I watched breakfast TV. I felt like Gabby Roslin was my TV mum. She looked a bit like my real mum and seemed in control of whatever situation she found herself in. I liked that about her. Even back then, I knew she wasn't prepared to suffer humiliation, at least not because she was a woman who was usually in a sea of lads. Most of all, I liked that she was always there. I switched on the TV, and there she was, always available, never busy or distracted.